to Internship SA. My name is Dwayne, and I am a final year medical student at UKZN. And
This call is now being recorded.
today we're going to be interviewing.
This call is now being transcribed.
We're going to be interviewing intern whose name is Dr. Fanele Gina from Ladysmith Hospital. Dr. Fanele, are you there?
Hi, Dwayne. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. So today we're going to be, as you know, asking you some questions about internship and how it's going. So there's going to be some questions from me. So it's basically like a basic format of things we, as final year medical students, all want to know. We're eager to know like the work environment, accommodation, the salary, also your quality of life as a doctor in relation to Ladysmith Hospital. So before we start with, I would personally like to thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to avail yourself to answer our questions and giving us insight on Ladysmith Hospital. And if you're fine, can we start with the questions?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, thanks. So just looking firstly at the first section with the work environment, would you like to give us just a brief rundown about each rotation? Also, before we start, just to let you all know, so I'll be asking some questions, and then later on, we can allow for other participants to ask questions. They can either unmute themselves, ask, or they can also put their questions in the comment section, and then I can read them also. So yeah, starting with the work environment, you can just give us a brief rundown about the rotations, which ones are the most difficult rotations, the most easiest rotations with regards to that hospital. What's the hours like, the calls like, how many calls are you expected to do? Yeah, and also academics, like which blocks or rotations are more academic, which ones are more practical, stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you, Dwayne. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Dr. Gina, doing my second year of internship in Ladysmith. So basically, in terms of the rotations, I'm gonna start with internal medicine. So internal medicine has 3 consultants, and they have quite a number of MOs. If you are rotating in internal medicine, basically you do wards and then you also do MOPD, and then you do your calls both in the wards and casualty. So that means if there's trouble in the wards, they call you. If there's trouble in casualty, they call you still. So in terms of academics, for our internal medicine in Ladysmith, there's not a lot of teaching, there's not a lot of supervision. So I would say if you are interested in pursuing internal medicine in future, I would not recommend Ladysmith. There's very little supervision, especially during calls. You will find yourself alone in casualty. Your senior will just tell you what to do over the phone if you need any assistance in a lot of the cases. If you are in the ward, you will likely have your MO there. I'm not sure how often they do the consultant ward rounds now, but I think they're supposed to be daily or every other day. Yeah, but I would say for internal medicine, I wouldn't recommend Ladysmith if you want to pursue it in future. In terms of calls, for internal medicine, you do 80 hours. So it usually looks like 3 weekday calls and 2 weekend calls. So weekend calls are going to be 24-hour calls, and then weekday calls are 16-hour calls. It usually looks like that. But you can have, or is it two? Yeah. Oh, it's 3 weekday calls and 1 weekend call. It's usually something like that, but it's never over 80 hours, or at least never over 86 hours. What else? Yeah, and then in terms of the workload, yeah, there's a lot of work. I think a contributing factor is that they basically combined the family medicine wards with the internal medicine wards. So because of that, you see a lot of patients, both at MOPD and in the wards and in casualty as well. Yeah, and then moving on to ONG. ONG, there are 2 consultants and then a number of MOs. There are no registrars in Ladysmith because they don't have that many consultants. I think they say it's because of where it's situated. Specialists don't want to come here, apparently. So ONG, I think it's a very good department. If you want to pursue ONG in future, I would recommend Ladysmith. 2 of the MOs that were there when I was doing ONG, they went for their reg interviews and they got accepted. That's how good the teaching is. In terms of the workload in ONG, I would say that it's seasonal. There are some months where there's a lot of work, and then there will be some months where there's not a lot of work. So yeah, it's seasonal. When there's a lot of work, there's a lot of work. When there isn't, there isn't. And then in terms of teaching, it's very good. In terms of supervision, it's very, very excellent. And then in terms of calls, I think now there's a new rule that you mustn't do over 96 hours because there's usually some over understaffing, especially in ONG for some reason. So the previous groups, myself included, we used to do a lot of hours. So now they have kept it at 96. So HPCSA recommends that you do a maximum of 80 hours. So their rationale is that if they're going to give us a pre-call and a post-call, then we must do up to 96. But yeah, if you are fortunate and your group has like seven interns or 8 interns, then you would do lesser calls, lesser hours. So yeah, I think that's ONG. Internal medicine is not a toxic department. ONG is not a toxic department. Just to sum it up, I don't think there's a toxic department because, like in rural hospitals, no one is toxic. That one toxic person will be the odd one out. And then in pediatrics, the team there is also excellent. They have 4 consultants. If you are interested in pursuing PEDS, I would recommend Ladysmith still. Almost every MO that comes here gets a diploma in pediatrics. In terms of supervision, it's also excellent. There are consultant ward rounds every day. There's very good teaching in PEDS. And then what else? In terms of calls, the calls are a bit hectic because so when you're on call, it's usually gonna be 2 people on call. It's you and your MO. The MO is responsible for NICU and you are responsible for casualty and the wards. So everything that comes into casualty, it's your baby basically, and every baby in the ward is yours as well. So it's a bit hectic. Like it becomes heavy on your shoulders because those babies are usually very sick. But because they compensate that with the teaching, so you'll be taught almost every morning, especially in the first 2 weeks. So you manage just fine. We manage just fine. Yeah, I think that is PEDS. And then surgery. There's 1 consultant and some senior MOs and junior MOs. The teaching, I would say it's mid. I wouldn't recommend surgery in Ladysmith if you want to pursue surgery in future. In terms of the workload, I think it depends where you are. I mean, if you're currently rotating in PEDS surgery, there's not a lot of work. In the female surgical ward, there's usually not a lot of work. But when you're in the male surgical ward, that's where you usually are gonna be bombarded. And then it also depends on the month that you are doing surgery. For instance, in December, there's usually a lot of work because of trauma cases. In terms of the calls, you do 80 hours. The calls are they're usually not very hectic. Yeah, I think surgical calls are preferred in first year of internship because the casualty team is usually gonna stabilize and do bloods for you and all of that, and then all you have to do is just to admit if you need to admit or review or take to theater. Yeah, I think that's such. So those were first year rotations, and then second year, there's family medicine. So the way that FemMed is structured, you have to spend 3 months at a rural hospital or a district hospital. So we use Estcourt and Emmaus. I was at Estcourt. It's just I would say there's a lot of work in terms of teaching and learning. It's very underwhelming. And then what else? The living environment in Estcourt is very good. That's a positive. Yeah, I think that's Estcourt. And then at Emmaus, the living environment is quite bad. There is understaffing, so there's a lot of work, especially during the day. But in terms of calls, you do what calls, so it's not a lot of work. The calls are not hectic. And what else? I think the teaching is also a bit underwhelming, but there are mandatory presentations that HPCSA requires us to do, those CPD meetings. So you do get taught, even though it's a bit underwhelming in the rural hospitals. And then you also spend the other 3 months you spend in the HIV clinic, and then you spend in a community healthcare center. So that's a center like, Mashu Polyclinic, something like that. And then you also spend 1 month in casualty. So when you are in the CHC, it's called St. Chad's. It's quite nice. Yeah, it's quite nice working there. It's not too hectic, it's not too busy, and you see minor things basically just to get an experience of working in a CHC. And then in the HIV clinic, there's a lot of learning there. I think I think after rotating in that clinic, you can go and write your HIV diploma and pass. There's a lot of teaching. And then in casualty, if you are rotating in casualty, you basically work 4 hours a day. So you either go in at 8 until 12 or from 12 until 4. So it's gonna depend. Some days are quiet, some days are not quiet. But yeah, there's supervision as well, especially during the day. So when you are doing those 3, the casualty rotation, the HIV clinic, and the CHC, you do casualty calls. The casualty calls, I think they've kept them at 84 hours now. Yeah, I'd say there's moderate supervision. Because sometimes there's something called a split. So when you're splitting, basically the others go and sleep, and then you remain there alone. And then when they come back, you go. So there's something like that. But the MOs are always available if you need any assistance. And then from casualty, okay, FemMed, that was FemMed, so 6 months in total. And then there's anesthesia. Anesthesia is, I think it's the best rotation in second year. Basically, you work in theater, so there's a lot of learning in anesthesia. I think before the end of the first month, you'll be confident to even do general anesthesia on your own. You'll be doing spinals every day. There's very, very good teaching. The way that they teach you is so you can pass your diploma. That's what they said. So, and then there's an exit exam. I think anesthesia is the one where it's guaranteed that you will write an exit exam on the last week of the rotation. But for some groups, they also write that exam in orthopedics. So it depends how well you perform during the rotation in ortho. In terms of calls, anesthesia calls are very chilled. It's capped at 80 hours. You don't do anything more than 80 hours. And then, basically, you will be called when there's an emergency, and then you have to dope that patient or put up your spinal. So it's usually like when you're on call, I would say you will work maybe a maximum, like the highest number of hours that I've worked doing a call was 5 hours. Because, it's usually not too hectic. And then also, so I would recommend anesthesia if you want to pursue anesthesia in future. I would recommend Ladysmith for that. And then also, I haven't done ortho yet, but they say there's a lot of teaching. And then in terms of the calls, they only do weekend calls. The interns only do weekend calls with an MO. I haven't done it, so I don't know much about ortho. But yeah, that's what I know. And because they say there's a lot of teaching, I know they have 3 consultants. I think I would recommend it as well. And they have a lot of senior MOs as well. I see them in theater. And then the psych. Psych is very chilled. There's 1 consultant. Psych is psych. There's learning as well. If you are doing psych, you do casualty calls, so that's the bummer. I don't know if I would recommend psych in Ladysmith because I haven't done it. I think in terms of the rotations, that's it.
Okay, so thank you for your detailed rundown of all the rotations in internship. We also got few questions relating to, I think, what you've been speaking about, but I'll read those questions a bit later when I just want to finish all the questions, like the format. So moving on to accommodation. So I just wanted to know, with regards to accommodation at the doctor's quarters at Ladysmith, can you tell us like what it's like the setup, also with regards to the lights and water, how much it costs, also the security, the safety, also with regards to do you need a car in Ladysmith? Can you manage with either Uber or public transport? And also, what are the areas of interest around that area?
Okay. So in terms of the DQs, the DQs are on list, so you won't find a DQ inside the hospital. It's only the allied healthcare workers like your physios and the nurses that live inside the hospital. We live outside. The closest DQs are right outside the gate. So those ones are sharing. It's 2 people per house. It's like a house with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. So and then so you find all kinds of DQs basically. You find bachelor apartments, or some call them open plan apartments. I think for my group we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have about 5 of those. Most of them are about 5 kilometers from the hospital, and then you find houses where there's 2 people. Basically, if it's a house and it has rooms that are big enough to be, not necessarily a reasonably sized, like a well-sized bedroom, then those rooms will be used for 1 intern, basically. So that means if you get a room that has maybe 4 bedrooms, but 2 are too small, then there's only gonna be 2 people that live there. But overall, the DQs, I'd say on average, they're about 5 kilometers or 4 kilometers from the hospital. So the hospital does provide transport for interns to get to and from work. I think it leaves at around 7 a.m. and then returns at 4. In relation to the malls, I would say in Ladysmith, everything is far if you don't have a car, and everything is close if you do have a car. Because from most of the DQs, the malls are about 3 kilometers away, 3 or 4 kilometers away. Town is also about 3 kilometers away. So it's very close if you have a car, but if you don't have a car, then it's quite far. We don't have Uber or Taxify, Bolt. We don't have those. So you have to use the taxi services, those people that you call, those kinds of cabs. And then in terms of taxis, because the DQs are in the suburban areas, you don't find taxis that can drop you off at the DQ. So yeah, I would say you do need a car for convenience, especially when you're on call. It's easier to just sleep in your bed. It's nicer to sleep in your bed than to sleep in the on-call rooms. Even though the on-call rooms are quite decent. Yeah, so, and then in relation to other things like malls and shops and all of that, so we have a Woolworth. We have like a total of 3 malls. Some are small, some are big. So there's like a Woolworths, but no Woolworths food, and other shops like Mr. Price Clothing, those kinds of shops. Orchard Street, to Funuklobisa your house. There's a Checkers, there's a Pick and Pay, there's plenty of ShopRites, there's Spar. Yeah. And then in terms of Groove, I think there are 1, 2, 3. I think there are 3 clubs at town, or 4. Yeah, it's nice if you like the party scene. It's nice, but there's only like 4 clubs, so I think you eventually get tired of them and you want to, explore other places like Newcastle and Estcourt, which are Estcourt is about 45 minutes away. Newcastle is about an hour away. If you want to let food, it's at Newcastle, or PMP, which is 2 hours away. We do have gyms. I think I'm aware of 3 gyms. Yeah, there may be more. 1, 2, 3. I'm aware of 3. There may be more. Or in terms of safety, most of the DQs have an alarm system. Usually, we had a theory that the burglaries that have happened, this was just our theory, that the burglaries that happened were from those guys from the alarm system, because usually you don't get a house break in if your alarm is on. So that's reassuring, I guess. And then in terms of safety outside of the DQ, I've never heard of any incident whereby maybe someone was mugged or anything like that. So I think it's pretty safe. Yeah, but there have been incidences of house break-ins, unfortunately. And then, did I answer everything you asked?
Yeah, you answered everything. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you for that. So you're saying that there's no like accommodation provided by the hospital. It's like privately owned, or is that what you're saying?
So the DQs are provided by the hospital, but they are leased. Yes. So they only take 900 rands boarding fee from your PESA, from your payslip,
Okay.
and then the hospital pays the difference.
So every like you said, and then those are the explanations you gave with regard to the DQ and the space and the room sizes and everything you're speaking about.
Yeah, and the DQs are quite proper. They are quite nice. They really are.
And also with regards to furnishment, like does it come with the washing machine, like appliances, bed, or do you have to buy all of those things and furnish the interior?
So you get the couches, you get the bed, you get a fridge, you get a microwave, and the stove. It's usually a built-in stove and a TV as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have an option of buying your own if you don't like the one that you get. The washing machine you have to buy yourself.
Okay. So that's the standard for all of their DQs.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to request, if you have any pictures of the DQs, can you please forward them to us so we can put it on the Internship SA group, if you don't mind.
No, I'll try and get you different pictures of different DQs.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next section about salaries, and that's what everyone wants to know. So what's the salary after tax and rural allowance as well?
So the salary actually changes from month to month. Next month's salary is gonna be 52,368 rands after tax, and before tax it's like 73,300 and something. I think before that it was like 53,000. So it changes. I don't know based on what. I think maybe I'm not quite sure based on what, but it will have these minor discrepancies, but it's usually like 1,000 or less, or a few hundreds. Yeah, so that's including the rural allowance, I believe.
Okay, so thanks for that one. And lastly, we want to know about quality of life as an intern at Ladysmith Hospital. So, how would you say being as an intern? This is your second year of internship. So, how have you been feeling as an intern? Your quality of life, your overall well-being, the working environment. What's your opinion, and would you recommend overall Ladysmith as a place to be?
I think this goes for most of my colleagues. I think we are happy in Ladysmith. You don't really feel too overwhelmed unless it's one of those seasons where you're doing a rotation that is hectic. The hospital itself is not toxic. In terms of adventure, we are very close to Durban, because Durban is like 3 hours. Ladysmith is a bit central between Durban and Johannesburg, so it's quite easy to get there. And then we also have the Drakensberg right here. So the Drakensberg is about, depending on how fast you're driving, it's about 30 minutes away. So we have these things. Yeah. So I would say everyone is quite content in terms of the quality of life. I don't think any of my colleagues regrets getting Ladysmith as a thingy, their place for internship. Yeah.
Okay. And with regards to weekends, so how many weekends do you get off?
So I think it depends on the rotation you are doing again. In most rotations, you're just gonna work for 1 weekend, and then in some rotations, you can maybe work 2 weekends and get fewer weekday calls. But yeah, I think in most rotations, you are expected to work 1 weekend. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for all of the information that you've provided. From my side, we've reached the end of the all the questions I was going to ask you. And now I'm just going to read the comment section just to check the questions that the students have been giving. I think you've been answering some of them as you was going along. And after, so whoever has questions, you can put it in the comment section. And after that, I'm just checking the time because our session ends at 7. So maybe we can just answer those questions in 10 minutes since it's 20 to 7 now. And at 10 to 7, if anyone wants to ask questions, unmute themselves and ask, they're free to do so. Okay. Okay, thanks. So I'm just going to go to the comment section.
Right. It's all right. I'm just gonna read and answer. I think it will save us time.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think the first question was by Don Early. Recall number of weekend calls per month. What's the competition like for Ladysmith? When are you expected to start? I think we've answered the weekend calls part, and then pre-call is guaranteed in every rotation. Yeah, pre-call is guaranteed in every rotation. Some rotations you get more hours, some you just get 2 hours. So you are expected to start. So for us, basically on the first business day of the new year, basically on the first business day of the new year. So for you, it will be the first weekday of 2025. But on that first day, you will just be busy with HR and getting settled into the DQ. So you won't be expected to actually go to work or do a call. You will only do the call maybe on the next day if you are done with HR or on day 3. But you only start working really once you are done with HR and they have orientated you as well. The second question was from Tracy. Do they provide transport? They do. Are the resources available? I think we've discussed this part. Do you struggle? What is the area like for one's mental health? Predominant language spoken. What's the number of intern intake this year? I'm not sure about the intern intake this year. I'm really not sure. But for our year, it was around, I think it was like 6 or 7 interns per rotation. Yeah, was 6 or 7 interns per rotation. And then in terms of the competition, I think it varies from year to year. For me, Ladysmith was my third option and I was taken here. I don't think there was a lot of competition in my year. Some of my colleagues, I think they didn't have Ladysmith as a choice, but they ended up here. Yeah, and then any assessments done? Yes, in anesthesia, there is an exam, an exit exam, and then in orthopedics, you may or you may not have it. It's easy to get your logbook signed. The hospital, the business basically depends on the department, and it's also seasonal. But all in all, some departments are more busy than others, like ONG is very busy. The cabs, or do you get to do all your C-sections, or do you get to do procedural skills? So basically in Ladysmith, you get to do everything. So you don't have to compete with registrars because there are no registrars. So absolutely everything. If you want to learn how to put a CVP, we'll put a CVP. Chest drains, you will put chest drains. C-sections, you will do C-sections, literally everything. There's very, the MOs are very useful when it comes to teaching skills. So literally everything you will do. Is there a gym around? We've answered that one. Would I say I feel prepared for ComServe? Yes, I do. I do. Not just me, but I think the yeah, man. Like I said, every skill you basically get to do, especially if you are proactive, because sometimes, for instance, if the MO wants to do a CVP, it's quicker if they just do it themselves. But if you ask them that, oh, I actually want to try, then they will gladly let you try. Chest drains, you will be putting them yourselves. Everything in terms of skills, I would say you leave Ladysmith very sharp. So in the first few months, they do provide that transport. The hospital provides transport, and then you also use the cab services of those people that you call. Where exactly is Emmaus? Emmaus is in Winterton. It's near Bergville. It's about, I think it's about 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour away from Ladysmith. There is rural allowance. Have you ever felt alone? What's your news about the hospitals or West experience? So for me, the reason why I've never felt alone is, I would say, is because number one, I'm very social. A lot of the people that I'm here with were, well, one of my best friends was also put here, and then the other colleagues, we very quickly became very close. My nays, I did say number one, internal medicine, do not recommend. Number two, I think sometimes you feel like I sometimes feel underwhelmed by the hospital management. You would find that maybe you are resuscitating a patient and you are looking for a back valve mask, for instance, and it's nowhere to be found in casualty, and you're just like, what is happening? So some of those things, and then the lack of supervision in a lot of the rotations during calls. MOs like to sleep, so you can find yourself doing the whole call alone while your MO is sleeping. Yeah, those are my nays. My work experience would be something that happened in Peds. I think someone made a mistake and the baby ended up dying, and I was on call. So I would say that was my worst experience. So those are our work challenges that you're just gonna have to learn to work through, you know. Different people, different personalities, different teams. Yeah, but ONG, if you're not careful, it gave me 2 mental breakdowns because of the amount of work. Yeah, I think I've answered every question.
Okay. So thank you for answering all the questions and reading for me. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so just overall, how out of 10, what rating would you give Ladysmith Hospital?
I would give it oh, that's a tricky question.
I mean, you like it overall.
Yeah, I do, but I like to be very objective when when giving such answers. I would give it. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
Not bad,
Yeah,
objectively.
yeah.
Subjectively.
Subjectively, if we're not being objective, I think I can give it maybe an 8.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, like you said, overall, it's a good place. From what I've got, I feel like overall it is a good place. It prepares you practically for to become more practical as a doctor. Academically, overall, you would say not that much.
Yeah.
Okay. And like you said, it prepares you overall for internship, I mean, for your ComServe. And just lastly, is it fine if with you if we can share a number on our Internship SA group chat? Maybe if the students want to contact you regarding Ladysmith Hospital, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, so thanks for that. And is there anyone else on the group that wants to maybe unmute themselves, ask questions? We have 10 more minutes. So anybody. But if you all are done with all the questions, then I think we're done. I think someone's asking, any advice do you have for us?
I think the question prior to that one was about salary delays. In my group, I'm not aware of anyone who had salary delays. I'm only aware of, I think, some ComServes or new MOs that were joining Ladysmith, but the way that their salaries were delayed, they basically got the basic salary, but their overtime was delayed, I think, until the 15th, and then they got it on the 15th. But it doesn't happen like in Gauteng where you don't get paid for like a month or 2 months. Yeah, so they got their basics and then their overtime was delayed by, I think, 2 weeks. And then any advice? I would say, is everyone from UKZN here?
I'm not sure. I'm from here, from there.
But I think
So we have very few students.
okay. But I think from my perspective as a UKZN trained doctor, to make matters worse, trained during COVID, I would say just what you were taught at med school is literally what you have to apply here. So you won't really struggle to you won't know what you won't get to a point where you just don't know what's happening. You will usually have a clue, and then that clue will likely lead you to the diagnosis. Don't abandon your MBOS. MBOS is very helpful because, like it or not, you will forget some of the stuff. So just to remind yourself, use your EM guidance for the doses, um, and eventually you will just know all of them by heart. um, don't hesitate to confirm if you are not sure, because it's better to just confirm than to give the patient the wrong dose. Yeah, and don't hesitate to ask wherever you are. Just don't hesitate to ask, because at the end of the day, it's about the patient, not about our own egos. Yeah, but just believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. Don't be too nervous. You've got this. Yeah, man, you'll be great.
Thanks for your advice. Yeah, we all have to believe in ourselves. So, someone raised their hand, Tobeka Nala. So
Sorry,
I'm
it
not.
was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So if there's no one else to ask questions, or maybe there's more that's coming on the chat box, I'm not sure. Oh, they're thanking you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I think we're done with the questions from my side. So just like to say thank you, Dr. Fanele. It's good to see you again as a doctor, not as a student. We used to think you always SRC member. So thank you for taking the time again, once again, for speaking to us and sharing your view subjectively and objectively regarding Ladysmith Hospital, and would like to wish you a good evening and everyone else a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was an honor. All the best, guys. If you see me in the workplace, I'm finally not Dr. Gina to you. Uh, in that way, you won't be scared to ask me anything. Yeah, all the best with your exams and all the best with internship.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc.